So the next use case I think is really important, especially for more senior community managers or leaders, is how do you structure programs, customization, inspiration. I know that community management is inspired, across industry from different community managers, different programs, and you always want to borrow from others as well as create some of your own. And so I think it's really important to not just come up with your own ideas, but to learn from the best by other leading communities and then putting the two together. I think one really great way to do this is to create original and customized program structures that are tailored for your objectives and KPIs for the company. So that can be anywhere, from brainstorming, from other companies that you've seen, putting that into ChatGPT and also creating, picking and choosing what is the best program structure as it's all laid out for you. Of course, with anyone that's used ChatGPT, this will only take a few seconds or a couple minutes, depending how long you want it to be. But I think, being able to do that instead of spending hours or days trying to brainstorm or have a workshop together and just having that huddle moment with yourself, what is the best way to move forward? I've also used this as a way to create great program names and titles. Of course, you always want to be clear with your community members what program you're actually launching and deciding to share. So to keep it fresh, I think it's also good to try and figure out, what type of names and program titles that would work best. So for a suggested prompt, I would definitely say create a one-pager, like a summary to start, of community guidelines about whatever type of program you want and certain restrictions. So for my best experience in the past, what I've done at deep learning, I didn't use it at Copy AI because ChatGPT wasn't available yet, but I generate the best outline and then I kind of fill it in from there. So you have an outline to start with, you edit it yourself, and then you continue to generate, whatever is the best structure moving forward. So for an example, create a community chapter program strategy that focuses on Latin America countries only and how to scale it within 6 months. So of course you can, change whatever objectives you want, whatever the community team is looking to do over the next, 3, 6 months, 9 months, a year. And then, this is what will come out, right? Defining the objectives, research and understand the local context, local partnerships, infrastructure, and all this comes out as just an outline, right? And you can decide, do you think this is actually realistic for the team? What actually needs to be outsourced? What can the community chapter members or chapter leaders implement? And going from there as well. Timeline implementation, every single one of these points, you can just copy and paste it directly back into the text window and be able to elaborate and expand as well. Another example is, create a one-pager of community guidelines for users that are not allowed to post any images in the community forum. And so immediately you have this really prompted, very legal guidelines that, you can just pass to legal or pass across the community team without having to spend too much time, focusing on creating the guardrails for people to not actually be able to, do things within your community. So this is really helpful for me. I'm definitely the type of person where I just want to focus on creating community programs and implementing them. The worst part, I think, for me as a community manager is how do I, chastise, I guess, some of the guardrails you need within the membership and things like that. So this definitely helps take away some of that stress and time allocation that I would much rather be doing somewhere else. Of course, there's going to be copy creation and editor. I'm sure everyone has used this to a certain degree. I think this is most important for the amount and volume of email campaigns, announcements, and formal responses to users. Of course, one thing that's also really exciting, which I'll get into the second half of the presentation, is how you can actually customize these things versus just having, the standard copy that's just automated across a platform. So of course, there's just so many different ways that you can use this. For me, I used to have to do webinars once every 2 weeks. So that means, many email campaigns, 5 different emails every single time, having to have all these responses and formalized. And, that's not even including the work of finding the speaker, securing the speaker, and all that kind of stuff, creating assets. And so all of these things that can reduce that time in my day-to-day job was extremely important to achieve. So this also helped out a lot for topics that I wasn't as aware of. When I was doing technical webinars at Deep Learning, I focused a lot on creating copy that was more for a technical audience that I couldn't speak to myself all the time. And then I would have it reviewed versus asking my technical colleague to actually create the content. And it just reduced that friction for them, as well as enable me to be a better content creator for my community role. So I always drop talking points, into ChatGPT to create a response email in just a few seconds. I think a suggested prompt that could work for a lot of people is just create a 4 to 5 sentence email that announces, whatever product is launching, what's new, how it's used, and all of that. And you can just continue to generate it in the style that you want, and it should be quite easy. So this example, create a template for a 4-sentence email response to a rude community member who has violated community guidelines. So instantly, you're going to be able to have something. If you're not satisfied with this, you can change the prompt to, you want to be more stern, you wanted to talk about another topic, all those types of things, really, really important and really valuable as well. This is my personal favorite use case of generative AI, which is image generation. So this I've definitely played around in my personal life. I really enjoy it, especially because I personally do not know how to draw. So the fact that I can write out a sentence and be able to create, really unique or interesting images is really impactful and quite amazing to me. So in a community role, I think the most important part is how much content community is expected to put out. So whether that's blog content, social media content, it can even just be content specifically for the community members. Of course, there's only so much text that people would want to read without, having like a graphic designer or some photography or studio shoot to provide all the content needed that's going to be shared digitally. So you can either create generic or detailed images for different placement of content. I think this is important for the backgrounds of event banners, hero images on the website or the blog, announcements, memes, images are endless. And I think that's something that's really exciting for what's to come in terms of creating better content, especially that's so important as a community leader in how you speak and engage with your community. So I think one prompt that's really helped me, I think just to get like the details into the image prompt is, you create a ratio image. So the ratio would be what sizing? Do you want it to be 1:1, like a square, 9:16 as like a hero image with a character? So that would be like a man or a woman, maybe some of their demographic information, their emotion, like what is their expression, what are they wearing, doing an action, whether that's, using a sledgehammer or, having body language like crossed arms, they're frustrated or angry in a location, setting, and props. They may be in an apartment, they may be in a forest, they may be doing something else, there may be things around them, right? You almost have to become an art director writing through a sentence in order for these things to happen. So you need to have as many details as possible in order for the image to, I think, look more than just an AI generated image. I don't know how to quite describe that, but there's certainly an aesthetic where people just create images that are very obviously AI generated, and I think you can take them to the next scale. So that's what I'll show in the next couple slides, where that variation is. Of course, it's up to you if you want full color, black and white, a different image style or aesthetic. Some people like cartoons or anime. Some people like the more hyper realistic. It just really depends on, what that goal is that you're looking for creating that content. Because for me, I remember running a blog program at UiPath, and there was just not enough free stock images to use. And so it's like, how do you get creative in trying to create the right imagery that communicates what that content is actually talking about? And I think that will be much more possible with Gen AI tools. So DALL-E is part of ChatGPT. It is their image generation model. So this is the prompt that I created. Create a square image of a female tech worker in casual clothes, getting frustrated at her desk and laptop, pulling her hair out because of community management, burnout, and a cozy, neutral toned apartment full of houseplants. And so this is what it looks like just to start out with. So it's very like cute and simple. This is obviously a cartoon style. Obviously, you can change it to whatever you want, but not everyone wants cartoon style, right? You can even make it dystopic or feeling dark. You can change the atmosphere and everything. It really just depends on what aesthetic you're looking for. So DALL-E, I prefer for like for cartoon-like aesthetic, for something to be funny, something to be expressive. Making all those little jokes, I think is really possible with DALL-E. One thing that I've used in my preferences more recently is Midjourney. So Midjourney actually has more of like in-depth, I think, um, image generation capabilities, which will show you some of the settings in a second. So I use the same prompt. Obviously, this is a much different aesthetic. It's still a little bit cartoon-like, but I've definitely created images that look pretty realistic or good enough for blog content or hero banners to just kind of pass off as like as people as well. So this is what some of those settings look like, where you're able to change via portrait or square, landscape. The model is up to you depending how advanced you want it to be. 6.1 is their most advanced model, and that's what I use. But stylization and weirdness and variety, that just kind of indicates how different each photo should look when it's being generated from the original prompt. And so you can really just continue to change it. So this was the one that I chose. So this is like a nice backlighting, neutral tone color. It looks like it's illustrated in watercolor. But in the sidebar where you're able to change, like very upscale means continue to change a little bit, including a higher quality image. You can under more, you can rerun or edit certain parts of the photo and things like that. So you can really just decide to change whatever settings you want. So this one, I decided to just run it again. And so, you can see the original photo still has that presence as like the seed photo. And then it just continues to generate, different variations of what you want. Sometimes you can in-paint, which means you can change things within the existing photos. Like if I wanted to change one of the plants, I could in-paint, or out-paint, which is extend the photo. If it was only a square image, I can make it into a hero image, like a rectangular image. So to me, image generation is really going to help out with some of that content where a lot of us are remote workers. We're not trying to do photo shoots, with different people, depending on the context. And this will help create a lot of that great content without generic imagery as well.